Despite coaching instability and on-field failures, UCLA's recruiting team has put together some shocking developments, all for the positive.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson Yoxheimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, download. Thanks for your support. Welcome, everydayers. What we're talking about today is one, Nico's struggles after returning from injury and then leaving to injury versus Washington. But we have to lead with this. Despite all the chaos, despite all this negativity that's been coming out against the UCLA athletic department, getting sued by Pasadena in the Rose Bowl, UCLA getting blasted by Washington, UCLA has slowly built, closing in on a top 50, top 40 recruiting class in 2026. How? Over the last few days leading up to the Washington game, UCLA has gotten some recommitments, some flips, and looked at some talent in international waters. What do I mean by that? Let's talk about it. Well, right before UCLA's game kicked off versus Washington, I think luckily so, the Bruins got the recommitment of one Cooper Jaworski. And you're like, okay, that name sounds familiar. Well, he's a SoCal kid, went to San Juan Hills, was one of those guys attending the UCLA game versus Washington, last home game for UCLA this season, and he recommitted, a 3-star, 6'4" offensive lineman. This is a guy that had one time committed a long time ago, decommitted, just like a slew of all those decommits happened right after Deshaun Foster got fired, and then Cooper Jaworski decided, hey, I'm going to come back to UCLA. And this is on top of UCLA finalizing the flip for Major Pride. Major Pride is a Bishop Montgomery kid from Torrance. He was going to go to San Diego State, and then next thing you know, flips his way over to UCLA. 3-star product, 6'3" receiver, and again, that's another guy who was hurt because of Bishop Montgomery's season being all up in the way it works, so going crazy because they had issues with their high school season. But Major Pride, a 6'3" receiver, rebuilds the receiver room. Jaworski helps build an offensive line room, which we've seen has struggled this year. And UCLA needs all the offensive line commitments they can get to build that room. And finally, hopefully I'm going to say this right, somebody from London, from the NFL Academy, Joel Quasser, if I'm even saying that right, maybe I'm not. He is a 6'2" linebacker who, on the day of the UCLA-Washington game, was one of 2 commitments for the Bruins. I believe this is 4 commitments in the last week or so, here in mid to late November, that this recruiting team has put together, finding ways to keep talent, retain talent, finding new ways. We know what international recruiting's been like for the men. We know what it's looked like for the women in terms of basketball. But for football, it's kind of untapped for UCLA. They go to the NFL Academy, they get a linebacker, like, okay, maybe this could be the start of something new and some out-of-the-box thinking. Because you're like, wait a minute, how am I going to go get some highly touted recruit and convince them to either flip or find somebody who's uncommitted and commit to UCLA, who hasn't even committed to playing in a home field in 26, who hasn't committed to a head coach, and hasn't committed to stability just yet. Well, despite all those things, UCLA's class, surprisingly, still has 17 commits. 17. Just like a few years ago, where Chip Kelly and UCLA would always have some of the lowest totals, either heading into the Big Ten, or in Chip Kelly's case, year after year in the Pac-12, high school recruiting is non-existent. And despite all these crazy decommitments, the sheer amount, forgot how many it was because it's here, decommit, recommit, UCLA, this is, I think, the second recommitment. Go back to Matthew Moasow, who recommitted at the end of October prior to Halloween. UCLA got a recommitment, they got a flip, and they found somebody new. So just like they did at the end of October, UCLA's working in threes, re-recruiting somebody they already had committed, they're flipping somebody else to replace somebody who decommitted, and finding talent at a position of need in an unorthodox way, in which they went over to the NFL Academy, made that relationship known with Joel Quasser, if I'm even saying that name right, and the Bruins are slowly putting together a roster of freshmen. Mind you, on this senior day versus Washington, UCLA had 33 seniors. That's not going to even include the amount of players who will transfer out. That's what's happening. The new coach is going to have to bring in a lot of transfers to supplement the freshmen who may or may not be ready to play next year. So right now, some positives, whoever is going to come in and coach might have some good talent because UCLA already identified and built good relationships with this 2026 class. Now it's can they get the right guy with the X's and O's, the personality, to bring in the fan base, to engage the program, to breathe life into it, stability. If you build it, they will come. Is it a stadium? Is it a recruiting class? Is it just some sheer fans coming to games? Build some of it and you're going to get nothing. But if you start laying the foundations, piece by piece, recruiting, like UCLA was starting to do this year, trying to get better marketing, not quite there in UCLA athletics right now. Find a head coach. Well, some of the names swirling right now between Bob Chesney, Sean Lewis, Jed Fish, potentially a top three, potentially not. Those are all respectable names that UCLA should be going after, some of which would bring a lot more excitement than others. But the Bruins are looking in that direction, trending in this direction with recruiting. That's a lot of positive wins for a program that has seen nothing but L's other than the Penn State win and their 3-game winning streak. What could help UCLA significantly is if they go out and they beat USC. Because UCLA went out and beat Penn State, that led to Penn State getting fired and added to this crazy coaching carousel where Penn State might actually hire the one guy that UCLA has found and tapped to potentially be their dude in this 26 coaching carousel, which would be Bob Chesney. And if Penn State ends up going to get the Pennsylvania native, then next thing you know, you're like, man, that would have been good. Well, UCLA is building these wins and putting something there for the next coach. And what UCLA could do to help recruiting even more, go out, beat USC, make them embarrassed, shock that recruiting class that says, hey, even in one of the worst seasons UCLA's had, we could still go and beat a potentially ranked USC team at their place, ruin the imagination that Lincoln Riley doesn't have, that all these USC fanboys may or may not believe that their team might be in 2026, and be like, wait, maybe we can flip some of those guys or showcase, hey, UCLA, even in their lowest of years, can still go ruin a USC season and is just a couple of steps away from hopefully being something. Not a CFP contender, let's be clear, but they're building in the right direction. And with good decisions, you keep taking baby steps forward, UCLA could be heading in the right direction. Now, they were already swinging so much in the right direction when it came to recruiting, all the way back about 10 steps. Now they've taken maybe about 3 steps forward recruiting, not to compete nationally, but in the right direction to repair what was a broken recruiting class destroyed because of Deshaun Foster's firing. So you got, again, Cooper Jaworski committing. You have Major Pride, who just flipped a couple of days ago from San Diego State to UCLA. Not sure if that means anything about Sean Lewis from San Diego State. And then you have the likes of an NFL Academy recruit, which I'm not really sure about the history of all that, but could be something new that UCLA might tap into to compete with the high school recruiting, to compete with the transfer portal and NIL. Go somewhere else. And UCLA might be going somewhere else. Creative, unorthodox, and hopefully just works. What's not working, though, is Nico Iamaleava's game. Came out, got hurt against Washington, and even when he wasn't hurt, wasn't looking that good. Let's talk about it next on Locked On UCLA. College football is back, and I couldn't be more excited. But hey, we even got college basketball coming up now because the tailgates, the rivalries, those are coming to an end. But now it's time for basketball season. Hey, there's nothing like it because let's be real. Actually getting those tickets can feel more like a battle than the game itself. The endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Gametime, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. The easiest way to score last-minute tickets is the best prices, no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. If you want to go check out UCLA SC at the Coliseum, go to Gametime, see what prices you can get over there, and think, wait, maybe you want to go cheer on the Bruins one last time. Or you're shifting your focus to basketball, where UCLA's got some primetime matches and matchups coming up in Big Ten play in the end of December. in beginning of January, go check out Gametime. That's where we're going to get the best deals on some UCLA basketball tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, the promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. Locked On College for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Gametime today. Cruising on here in Locked On UCLA, we're talking Nico Imaliava's struggles. A week removed from missing the Ohio State game with a concussion. There are many thoughts that were swirling, whether it was my brain, what I was being told, and what other people were thinking with Nico's all of a sudden inability to play against Ohio State. We're not really going to touch on that. That's just something you might think at home, but he was unable to play, had concussion symptoms that kind of came out after the Nebraska game that materialized. Now, came back, was practicing throughout the week, was cleared to play, and is against Washington, a team that was down quite a few starters, especially offensively, a defensive backfield, a secondary that was prepared for UCLA to try and go vertical. It's a tough team to go past them. And then they're a little more physical than UCLA's up front, forcing Nico to scramble and do everything he could to make sure his helmet didn't pop off time and time again. And yet, even when he was kept upright, even when the play call was right, Nico kind of looked skittish, and the inaccuracy was showing its ugly head again. Nico had 16 completions in this game on 26 passes. Demond Williams Jr., the young quarterback over at Washington, it's not like he had a fantastic game. Yes, 213 yards passing, 2 touchdowns and a pick. He had one more completion than Nico on the same amount of attempts. Again, Demond Williams Jr., 17 for 26, had 213 yards on 8 yards per completion. Nico, 16 completions on 26 attempts, had 69 yards. That averaged less than 3 yards per completion. Nico averaged 3 yards per carry, which is only an okay amount, especially what he's done this year running the football. And his completions weren't going anywhere. And some of the misses he had, yes, he had a huge drop from Titus Mokia Atmalala. But some of those other throws, some of those other reads he had versus Washington in this game were somewhat puzzling. But yes, some of the times he was scrambling for his life. The athleticism is there. The ability to put a dart on a receiver is there. The problem is he doesn't always have the receivers who can go up and win the ball in the air for an NFL-like catch. He doesn't fully have the NFL skills, the full superstar-like skills to put it on a dot to give those guys a better chance at catching the ball. And then there's some throws where it's like, okay, this is more of a college football-like play. Let's get this guy open over the middle, find him wide open, and just throw it right down to him. And Nico, again, sails it sometimes when running to his right, overthrows it, can't seemingly throw it over the middle, and this time did cough up the football. And you're like, you're not going to beat Washington when you can't win the turnover battle, when you're turning it over and over again. And I know Nico had nothing to do with the fake field goal turned into a touchdown, but then Luke Duncan came in, against the Washington backups with a big, big deficit on the scoreboard, but he looked a lot better. 5 of 11, pushed the ball vertical. I think, what was it, a 37-yard touchdown pass to Mikey Matthews, averaged about 7.5 yards per completion, and despite him being a lot less athletic, having not thrown too many successful passes against Ohio State the week before in Columbus, Luke Duncan, he looked a little bit better than Nico before Nico went out injured. And you're like, man, I wonder if Nico can truly develop as a pocket passer. He can zip the ball in ways nobody can. He can escape sacks unlike anybody I've ever seen in some regards. Now, yes, there are some mobile quarterbacks. You can think Lamar Jackson. You can see Jalen Hurts. A lot of mobile quarterbacks right now have the escapability like a Patrick Mahomes. The problem is Nico has very poor accuracy. The ability to read and dissect a defense is not there. Demond Williams Jr. was not slicing up the UCLA defense on every time, but there were plays where the Huskies decided to go vertical and they could complete it. Where UCLA with Nico, is not making that same play. And I appreciate all the heart he's put in, evading the tackles, doing everything he can to literally not get sacked and have his helmet cracked again and again. Because the O-line was not having it today. It's not been having it all season. The UCLA running game sometimes relies on the legs of Nico Imaleava. And then here they are, Nico getting cracked again and again and again. You're like, man. But something's wrong when you complete 16 passes for about 2.5 yards per completion. Some of that is the offense. Some of that is the Huskies dominating. And there were quite a few passes down the field that he could not go and be successful with. And that's some of the warning signs all those Tennessee fans, all those Tennessee haters were sharing with us. You're going to see with Nico. And they're rearing their ugly head. And we've seen that when UCLA was losing big to UNLV, sometimes to New Mexico. And now during this losing streak, when Nico has played, there have been some moments where like, man, in the Nebraska game, UCLA played much better, but it never felt like they were going to win that game, even though it was a close score. In this game, UCLA struggled, kind of shot themselves in the foot, had the ball in Washington territory with 4th down, but never felt like UCLA was going to move the ball. Either every read was poor, everything that was called by Jerry Neuheisel was clogged up, or it just wasn't working. Nothing was working. And it's like, wait a minute, we're starting to see the limitations of an Nico. Do we want Nico to come back? That's a whole nother discussion. That's another episode coming in the offseason. But man, oh man, yes. Is Nico clearly like the best player? Yes. Does he look like a 5-star athlete? Absolutely. Can he make throws on a dime in places where some of these receivers aren't seeing from some of the best players? Are the Joey Aguilar numbers much better than Nico? Yes. Is he having a lot more success, team and individual? Absolutely. Who got the better end of the deal? Joey Aguilar. Who is the better fit for UCLA? It would be Nico over Aguilar, I think. But after seeing a couple of passes from Luke Duncan against what I presume to be the Washington backups, I would think, yes, okay, it looked better, but I can't necessarily give Luke all the credit where Nico is coming up against a design game plan against him in this game, where 4th and short, 3rd and short, read option, Nico's leaking out. It's not like that Penn State game that got James Franklin fired, basically, where he ran for so many yards. Everybody's game plan against that. Jerry Neuheisel can't find the opening guy in his play calling sheet. And when he does, Nico's not seeing it, or he's not even hitting him. It's just check down after check down after check down, where you're like, what are we doing offensively? Some of which receivers can't get open. So that's the talent and the inability to go make a tough catch. Can't help yourself when you're having, 2 or 3 fumbles in this game. UCLA had a fumble from Nico, had a fumble from Mikey Matthews, technically one from Cash Peterman on the flip behind, and then Jameer Benjamin recovered one for UCLA, leading that touchdown. But when your receiver's fumbling, when Nico's fumbling, that really killed the game. And that shifted the momentum in a game that I think could have, in a different world, been closer than 48-14. I'm not going to say UCLA could have beat Washington, but Nico wasn't helping himself out. The receivers weren't helping himself out. The O-line wasn't. Everything wasn't clicking. And Jerry Neuheisel, I think, is starting to hit that, not necessarily rookie wall, but after the early sensational success, it's come to a quick stop, a quick halt. Doesn't mean he will never have success. Nico, the Jerry Neuheisels of the world. But I do think, in one case, maybe Jerry needs to go blossom elsewhere, had the highs and lows of play calling, and then come back to UCLA, where it can be that future head coach forever, that future offensive coordinator that eventually takes over and has a heart for UCLA blue and gold if he wants to learn everything that it takes to be a play caller, I think. For Nico, he's slowly reaching his ceiling. The footwork isn't always there. The accuracy of hitting the receivers down the field isn't always there. And sometimes the playmaking isn't there. Now, were there a lot of plays where he evaded like 3 tackles just to get a yard? Yes, that is 100% there. But he's certainly not capable of hitting a guy over the middle in stride for a touchdown pass. It's really not. Luke Duncan right down the middle, Mikey Matthews touchdown. You're like, dude, why can't we do that more often? Well, when you're down 40 and you're playing the backups, it's a different story. But man, I hate to say it, but there were times in just a few throws, Luke looked a little more comfortable than Nico ever was. And I wonder what that's going to mean for the next game against USC and what that's going to mean for Nico's future, whether he goes calling other places, which I've heard, or if he sticks around to see which UCLA head coach might unlock his game to the next level while keeping him home in SoCal. All fascinating questions and debates we'll have on future Locked On UCLA episodes. Hands up, Bruins fans. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off. Go Bruins.